The training hall of the Valkyrie Combat Academy was built for giants. Ceilings arched 50 feet overhead, designed to accommodate the towering Draken instructors and the broad-shouldered Seth warrior caste. Against that backdrop, Mara Ellison looked like a child who had wandered into the wrong building. She was, by every measurable standard, the smallest cadet in her cohort. 168 centimeters of human in a sea of alien physiology built for strength, speed, and survival in gravities and atmospheres that would have killed her without a suit. The other cadets had taken to calling her the houseplant, decorative, fragile, and entirely out of place. Commander Xyren, a four-armed Draken veteran with 3 centuries of combat experience etched into the scarred plates of his hide, had not wanted a human in his class at all. The Coalition's new inclusion mandate had forced his hand, and he made no secret of his opinion. "You are here because politics demanded it," he had told her on the first day, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through the floor. "Not because you belong here. Try not to die in the first month. It would generate paperwork." Mara had said nothing. She had simply saluted, the human gesture looking strange and small among the bowed heads and crossed arms of her alien classmates, and taken her place at the back of the formation. For the first 3 weeks, the mockery was constant. In sparring drills, she was matched against opponents twice her mass who could end an exchange with a single blow. She lost. Often. The Kretallan cadet named Vosk, broad as a doorway and twice as hard, took particular pleasure in flooring her within seconds, then standing over her with a low growl that needed no translation. "Pathetic," Xyren would mutter, watching from the observation platform, arms crossed in a quadruple fold of disapproval. The humans were supposed to bring something useful to this war. Instead they send us this. What none of them understood, what none of them had bothered to ask, was that Mara Ellison had grown up in the ruins of New Manila, in the resource wars that had torn through Earth's reconstruction decades before the Coalition ever found humanity worth contacting. She had not learned to fight in a padded academy gymnasium. She had learned in collapsed tenements and flooded subway tunnels, where the only rule was that there were no rules, and the only goal was to still be breathing when it was over. She had simply chosen, for 3 weeks, to lose quietly. To watch. To learn the rhythm of every species in that hall, the way the Draken telegraphed their strikes through a shift in their shoulder plates, the way the Kretallan overcommitted to forward momentum because their physiology punished hesitation, the way the lean, fast Centauri relied entirely on reach and panicked the moment that reach was closed. She had been building a map. And on the morning of the cohort's first-ranked combat evaluation, she finally used it. The evaluation chamber was different from the training hall, smaller, ringed with monitoring drones, the floor a hardened alloy that recorded every footfall, every joule of force exchanged. Cadets fought one at a time, scored across speed, tactical decision-making, damage efficiency, and adaptability. Scores were posted publicly. Reputations were made or broken in a single bout. Mara was paired against Vosk. A ripple of quiet amusement went through the observation deck. Even Xyren, seated at the judge's console, allowed himself the alien equivalent of a sigh, a long exhale through both nostril ridges. He had seen this matchup before. He expected to see it again. The signal sounded. Vosk charged immediately, just as he always did, his momentum a freight train of muscle and confidence. And just as she always did, Mara appeared to retreat, except this time, she did not retreat in a straight line. She pivoted at an angle. Vosk's wide-set eyes were never built to track well, and as his shoulder plate passed her by a hand's width, she drove her elbow into the precise, unarmored seam where his shoulder met his neck, the spot she had watched him expose in every single training bout for 3 weeks. Vosk staggered. Before he could reset his stance, Mara was already inside his guard, using his own momentum against him in a throw that sent 300 pounds of Kretallan cadet crashing into the alloy floor hard enough to rattle the observation deck's railing. The room went silent. Vosk surged back up, furious now, abandoning technique for raw aggression, exactly what Mara had hoped for. She had spent 3 weeks learning that an enraged Kretallan was a predictable Kretallan. She slipped beneath his next strike, used the low center of gravity that her alien classmates had mocked as a weakness, and put him on the ground a second time with a sweep that ended the bout in under 90 seconds. The drones chimed. The score appeared on the overhead display. The hall erupted, not in mockery this time, but in stunned, scattered murmurs that rippled outward like a shockwave. Xyren leaned forward, his 3 centuries of battlefield instinct suddenly very, very interested. It did not stop there. Cadet after cadet was rotated through against her, partly out of disbelief, partly because the Academy's evaluation protocols demanded a full data set before anyone trusted the first result. Mara fought a Centauri duelist and closed the distance before his reach advantage could matter. She fought a pair of Draken cadets in a coordinated drill and used the narrow corridors of the evaluation chamber. Terrain her smaller frame moved through with ease, to fight them one at a time instead of together. By the end of the day, her combat efficiency score sat at the top of the entire cohort. Not adjusted for species. Not curved for size. The raw number, standing alone, was higher than any cadet Commander Xyren had trained in over a decade. He requested her combat logs that night. He watched them 3 times. What he saw was not luck. It was not a fluke born of underestimation, though that had certainly played its part. What he saw was a fighter who had spent 3 weeks gathering intelligence while everyone around her assumed she was simply failing. A fighter who understood that physical mismatch was not a weakness to overcome through brute force, but a variable to be exploited through patience, observation, and timing. A fighter who had been trained somewhere, by something, to treat every loss as data rather than defeat. The next morning, Xyren called her to his office. The 4-armed Draken stood as she entered, an unusual courtesy for a commander of his rank, and for a long moment he simply studied her. "You let them believe you were weak," he said finally. "It was not a question." "I let them believe what they already wanted to believe, Commander," Mara replied evenly. "It cost me nothing. It cost them everything." Xyren's mandibles clicked together in what, for a Draken, passed as something close to a grim, respectful smile. 3 centuries I have trained warriors from 40 worlds. I have seen strength. I have seen speed. I have rarely seen patience like this. He paused. Your species was nearly excluded from this Academy's combat program entirely. There were arguments that humans lacked the physical baseline to be worth training. I've heard that argument before, Commander. Usually right before I prove it wrong. For the first time since her arrival, Xyren did not look at her as an obligation forced upon him by coalition policy. He looked at her the way he looked at warriors worth investing in. "Report to advanced tactical training at dawn," he said. "And Cadet Ellison, stop hiding what you can do. The houseplant comment ends today. You've earned the right to be feared." Word spread through the Academy faster than any official announcement could have managed. By week's end, no one called her the houseplant anymore. Vosk, true to a warrior's code that Mara had come to respect even as she exploited its predictability, requested a rematch, not out of anger, but out of genuine desire to learn from her. She agreed. And this time, when she won, the hall did not laugh. It applauded. Commander Xyren, watching from the platform where he had once dismissed her as paperwork waiting to happen, allowed himself a single thought he would never have admitted aloud 3 weeks earlier. Humanity, it seemed, had not sent the coalition a houseplant at all. They had sent a storm that simply preferred to wait before it broke.